My name is Eugene. I'm from the law office of Siegel Wang. I'm an attorney there, and this is Tina. She will be translating for me today.
各位好，这位是我们西格律师楼的律师优景我是 Tina 我将作为大家的翻译今天。
We're going to briefly describe the EB-5 program and its general requirements.
今天我们将简单介绍一下 EB-5 投资移民的基本法律资讯。
This just describes the basic EB-5 program. Basically, EB-5 stands for Employment-Based Fifth Preference Immigration.
什么是 EB-5 投资移民呢 ？EB-5 简称就是美国劳工移民的第5类优先。
EB-5 is an immigration visa for investors abroad who want to invest in the United States economy.
EB-5 呢是美国移民法中针对海外投资人移民所设立的一种移民签证类别。
It allows foreigners to obtain a United States green card and immigrate to the United States after investing in the United States economy and helping to create jobs.
它是要求海外的投资人呢，通过投资50万美金或者更多进入美国的一个经济实体，然后呢，通过这种方式来获得绿卡。
As you can see, there are 3 basic EB-5 methods of immigration.
你可以看到现在有3种EB-5 投资移民的方式。
Under the first method, a foreign investor invests $1 million in the United States economy by investing the money in a new business project.
第一种形式呢，是您在美国任何一个地方投资100万美金，然后投资人自己创造一个全新的企业。
The investor may obtain a green card by having his contribution create 10 direct jobs in the project and personally managing the project himself or herself.
这种形式呢，投资人必须自己亲自管理该企业，并且该企业呢必须直接创造10个以上的全职就业机会。
In the second type, investors need only invest $500,000 United States dollars in a business project.
第2种形式呢，是在投资50万美金到一个企业中。
The investment must also create at least 10 jobs in the business project, just as the other EB-5 method.
和第1种类型一样的，投资的这50万美金必须直接创造10个以上全职就业机会。
However, in this type of EB-5 investment, the investment must be made in a rural area project.
那么这种呢，跟第1种区别是呢，必须投资在美国政府指定的农村偏远的地区。
A rural area is generally an area outside of a major city with less than 20,000 people, and it is defined by the United States Census Department.
通常呢，这里所指的农村地区就是美国城市行政规划区以外的地区，人口通常是2万人以上的州郊区城镇这是由美国政府指定的一些。
The third method is the most popular EB-5 method right now.
第3种类型呢是现在最为流行的、最多人做的，就是投资到区域中心的这种类型。
In this type of investment, the investor also invests only $500,000 in a new business project.
在这种类型呢，投资人也是投资50万美金。
But it needs to be invested in a targeted employment area.
必须投资到所谓的目标就业区域。
A targeted employment area is an area defined by the government as having at least 150% greater unemployment than the national average of unemployment.
所谓的目标就业区域呢，就是由州政府公布的失业率超过全美平均水平150%的地区。
What makes this the most popular EB-5 method is that it is easier to create jobs because investors may also include indirect jobs created and derivative jobs created.
为什么这种投资到区域中心的这种类型最为流行呢？因为这种类型的投资移民呢，不需要直接创造10个以上就业机会，那这10个就业机会可以是直接的、间接的、衍生的。
Also important here is that investors do not need to personally be actively involved in managing the business project.
同样的，不同的是，这种类型呢，投资人不需要本人亲自管理该企业，所设的区域中心会代为管理。
Instead, the project can be managed by what's called a regional center, which we will describe shortly.
也就是说呢，所设立的这个区域中心，它会代为管理这个该企业。这个我们会介绍什么是区域中心的下一部分。
And this is a brief summary of what I've just explained. This chart shows the 3 different types of EB5 investments and their similarities and differences.
这里是3种 EB5 投资移民的比较，前2种是传统性的投资移民，第3种是投资到区域中心项目的。
Once again, the first type of investment requires $1 million, but the other 2 require only $500,000.
传统的投资移民呢，投资到全美各地的是要求$100万的投资额，其他的2种是需要$50万。
They all differ by where they can be created. In other words, the first investment can be anywhere in the United States, but the other 2 have requirements for a targeted employment area or a rural area.
那么第1种呢，投资$100万的是可以在全美任何一个地方。那么第2种呢是必须在政府指定的农村的地区，第3种呢是必须在指定的特殊目标就业区域。
And as I said, the last type of investment, the investor does not need to personally be involved in managing the business, and it is easier to create jobs.
刚才我也说到了，这个最后一种投资到区域中心的这种投资移民方式呢，它的好处就在投资人不需要自己亲自参与该企业的管理，而且呢，它的创造就业是衍生的。
And as you can see, the last type of investment includes somewhat of a smaller risk than the other 2.
因此呢，投资到区域中心的这种投资模式呢，相对来说风险是比较小的。
This describes what a regional center is and how it is involved in the EB5 investments.
这个是重点介绍一下什么是 EB5 投资移民的区域中心的类别。
An EB5 is basically a private entity or a private company which acts as a management company for EB5 investments.
所谓的区域中心呢，实际上就是一个私人经济实体，也就相当于一个项目管理公司。
All regional centers have at least 1 project or more, and they're all approved. Both the regional center and the projects are always approved by and supervised by the USCIS.
每一个区域中心呢，通常至少拥有1个或者多个的投资移民项目，然后这些都是必须经过美国移民局严格审核和批准的。
There are many regional centers around the United States, all across the nation, but each one is limited to a specific area that it serves.
全美呢有非常多的区域中心和项目，那每个指定的区域中心呢，都是处于美国一个特定的地理区域。
And a regional center manages, while it manages the projects, it has a full staff of all the necessary personnel required to do such management.
每个区域中心呢都会按照移民局的要求，管理该区域中心。
Regional centers have a full staff of economists, attorneys, business managers, and other assistant personnel to help manage the projects.
每个区域中心呢，通常都拥有专业的团队为投资人管理项目，通常呢都包括律师啊、管理人员、财务人员等等。
There are several advantages that make EB5 more advantageous than certain other types of immigration.
这里是 EB5 区域中心投资移民的优势。
EB5 processing time for investors usually takes about 6 months.
通常呢，区域中心的这种EB5 投资移民的形式呢，整个申请周期是5到6个月。
The biggest advantage is that while only one investor needs to apply and then make the investment, his or her entire family can immigrate to the United States.
那么投资移民的最大的好处呢，是一个人申请，全家都可以获得绿卡。
Upon approval of the investor's application by the USCIS, the investor's spouse and children under 21 years old can also obtain green cards and immigrate to the United States.
一旦 EB5 的申请获得批准后，这个投资人的全家，包括投资人的配偶以及21岁以下的未婚子女，都可以直接移民到美国。
The EB5 requirements also do not require EB5 investors to have a specific type of education, business background, or age limit.
那么另外一大好处呢，就是投资移民呢对投资人的没有任何学历、语言、年龄、商业背景方面的任何限制。
EB5 investors are also not required to manage their investment projects unless they choose to do so.
投资人呢也不需要本人亲自管理该企业，除非呢您有特别的需要。
An EB5 investor must be at least 21 years old.
这里是 EB5 投资移民的基本的要求，申请人必须至少年满21周岁。
And he or she cannot be a United States green card holder. They must be a foreigner.
而且必须是外国人，不能是美国绿卡持有者。
The investors must have at least $500,000 to invest and be able to pay other fees.
投资人必须至少拥有50万美元的现金。
The investment capital must come from lawful sources.
而且呢，这50万美元的现金呢，必须来源合法。
It does not have to be the investor's own earned income. However, the investor must be able to prove where the money originated from and that it did not come from illegal activity.
这50万美金的现金呢，来源不必是投资人本人靠积累工资所得，但是呢，必须要证明来源合法即可，可以来源于像赠与啊、继承啊、股票收益啊等等各种形式。
As I've described before, the investment must lead to the creation of at least 10 jobs in the invested business project.
刚才我已经介绍过了，就是投资移民呢，这个投资人的这笔资金呢，必须至少给美国创造10个以上的全职就业机会。
And the investor also needs to pay several other fees.
最后呢，投资人必须支付一些其他的费用。
The government charges a $1,500 filing fee to file the EB5 investment for approval.
包括移民局要求的I-526的申请费用就是1500美金。
There's also an attorney fee of $20,000.
另外律师费大约2万美金。
And finally, if the investor chooses to participate in a regional center investment project, which is currently the most popular type of investment, there's also a $30,000 to $60,000 regional center fee.
如果投资人呢希望是通过区域中心的这种模式来投资的话呢，这是现在最为流行的一种投资方式。那么区域中心的管理费，现在目前市面上呢通常是3万到6万美金不等。
This chart describes the three general types of EB5 investment projects.
下面我们介绍一下美国 EB5 投资移民的项目。那么这个表格简单的介绍了3种目前最为流行的投资移民的项目。
The first and most common type of project is a real estate development project.
第一种类型的项目呢是不动产类型的项目。
Then there are non-real estate projects.
然后第二类是动产类型的项目。
And combined projects that are a mix of real estate and other types of business.
最后是组合类型的项目，也就是不动产和动产相结合的项目。
Each kind of project has its own advantages and disadvantages.
每一种类型的项目呢都有各自的优势和劣势。
Real estate projects tend to be very large scale and complex.
所谓的不动产类型的项目呢，通常呢，项目的类型都比较大，规模比较大。
They typically require the collaboration of many investors to contribute investment to complete the project.
通常呢，都要求比较长的时间来募集比较多的投资人。
This leads to a long period of time to implement the project.
所以呢，所谓不动产类型的项目呢，都是要求比较长的时间等待开工。
On the other hand, real estate projects tend to be more secure because they have expensive real estate acting as collateral.
但是另外一方面呢，不动产类型的项目呢，相对来说都比较的稳健，因为它的抵押性比较高，可抵押性比较高。
A non-real estate project, therefore, is generally more riskier.
第二种类型呢， 所谓的动产类型的项目呢，通常来说呢，风险性都比较高。
This is because non-real estate projects tend to have less types of collateral.
因为动产类型的项目呢，通常呢抵押性比较低。
On the other hand, even though non-real estate projects are a little bit riskier, they usually make it easier for investors to create jobs.
但是呢，它的好处是呢，动产类型的项目通常呢比较灵活性高，比较容易创造足够的就业。
And finally, the mixed type of projects tend to be more flexible for investors.
同样呢，动产类型的项目呢，灵活性比较高。
They often have high liquidity and allow investors to create jobs in various types of ways.
通常呢，能够在短时间内给投资人创造足够的就业。
So this describes how to choose projects and what makes a good project to invest in.
下面呢，根据我们的经验呢，向大家介绍一下如何选择项目。
Investors often try to invest in high return, large scale projects.
现在很多投资人呢，认为选择高回报、大规模的项目可能是好项目。
These types of projects are attractive to investors because they can usually obtain a few percentage points return on their investments.
现在呢，所谓的高回报、大规模的项目呢，看起来是比较有吸引力的，因为大部分呢，这所谓高回报的项目呢，都标榜着给投资人比较高的利息。
However, we caution investors and do not recommend such projects.
但是呢，我们作为律师的角度呢，并不建议大家投资到这种所谓高回报的大规模的项目。
This is because these kinds of projects that are large scale usually involve real estate, and as I've explained before, real estate projects tend to take a long time to implement.
因为这种所谓的大规模的项目呢，通常呢都是与地产类型有关的项目。那么这种类型的项目呢，通常都会周期比较长，比较难募集到资金。
Also, these types of projects often generate the return from the actual investment capital and not from the business's operational revenue.
而这种类型的项目呢，它标榜的所谓高回报，大多来自于投资人投资的本金，而不是由投资人这个投资运营的利润中获得的。
When this happens, the government will deny the investor's application because the government prohibits the investor's investment capital from not being at risk.
一旦这种所谓的高利息来自于本金的话呢，按照美国的移民局的法律规定呢，是不符合投资移民的法律的要求的，你的投资移民就可能被拒绝。
A good project is one where an investor can obtain his green card within 2 years.
那么我们谈一下什么是好的项目。好的项目呢，就是能够使投资人在申请之日起2年内，投资人成功的拿到正式绿卡。
This means that after 2 years after the approval of the investor's application, he or she can get an unconditional permanent green card.
也就是说呢，在你的有条件绿卡获准批准之后2年内，能够把这个有条件去掉，能够成功的拿到正式绿卡。
A good project is also one that clearly spells out in the contract when the investors and what's the time frame in which the investors will have their capital returned to them.
另外呢，好项目的标准就是能够在合同里面明确的规定，什么时候能够将这50万的本金归还给投资人。
A good project is also one where contractually there will be secure collateral for the investor to protect his capital.
好的项目呢，通常呢都有比较好的抵押性，能够使投资人的投资资本呢得到比较好的保障。
And to repeat what I've said before, a good investment project is usually one that does not require investors to wait long to begin implementation of the project.
刚才我已经讲到了，好的项目呢，通常呢能够迅速的落实项目计划，不需要投资人长期 长时间的等待项目的落实。
The investor should also make sure that the project is understandable and that the business plan clearly explains how jobs will be created.
另外呢，投资项目的创造就业模式清晰合理也是很重要的。投资人必须能够清楚地理解该项目是如何创造足够的就业。
Finally, a good project is one that will be supported by the communities and by the government.
另外呢，好的投资项目呢，通常都是由政府支持的，有比较好的社会效应的。
When the projects are supported by the government, meaning by local politicians and officials, projects tend to be less riskier.
通常呢，如果受到美国政府的支持，由美国政府的政策优先导向相一致的政策呢，等的项目呢，也是风险性效相对较小的。
And USAS prefers when and generally likes when the projects are such that benefit the local communities.
那么美国移民局呢，也会倾向于选择对于美国的社区啊社会有利的项目。
A project that benefits the community is one that, for example, contributes to significant employment to a specific economic industry, perhaps one that is in trouble.
项目完成对社会有利的呢，比如说能够增加美国某个行业的就业人数，能够有环保意识的项目。
And another type of community benefit that we often see is one where the project benefits the environmental aspects of the community.
也就是说，对于有环保意识的、有环保效应的项目。
This describes the general EB-5 application process.
下面我们介绍一下 EB-5 投资移民的基本的申请程序。
The first step, of course, is for the investor to gather all the necessary information and to make the choice to invest in the EB-5 program.
首先，当然是投资人必须了解投资移民的基本信息，然后最终决定做投资移民。
The first step the investor takes is to fill out a questionnaire form, which an attorney will use to determine if the investor is eligible to participate in the program.
然后呢，投资人通过填写资质评估表来提供个人信息。填妥的资质评估表呢，将发给美国移民律师，律师将评估投资人是否符合移民局规定的投资移民的要求。
If the investor is determined to qualify, the next step is for him to sign the attorney retainer agreement, privacy agreement, and to make an initial deposit of the attorney fees.
如果投资人被认为是符合投资移民要求的，那么在和美国移民律师签订委托律师代理协议以及保护隐私协议等等之后，付了一定的律师费定金之后呢，美国的移民律师将成为您的代理人。
Next, the investor reviews the offering memorandum, which describes all the details of the project that they will invest in.
接下来呢，进入实质操作阶段呢，投资人呢将查阅具体的项目，项目的公司内部备忘录啊等等的一大堆材料。
When the investor reviews the offering memorandum and chooses a project, he or she will then sign the project documents such as the partnership, the limited partnership agreement, the subscription agreement, and an escrow agreement.
在投资人查阅了这个项目公司内部备忘录以后呢，一旦决定选择投资该项目呢，就将进一步签署包括投资协议、投资合伙人协议、托管人协议、认购协议等等一系列的法律文件。
Next, the attorney will help the investor deposit the investment funds into an escrow account.
然后呢，在律师的指导下，开始操作将这个投资资金50万美金存入一个美国的第三方的托管账户。
The attorney then also prepares the I-526 application, which is the initial EB-5 approval form, and files it with the government.
然后呢，律师将准备投资移民的申请材料，包括I-526申请。
It may take about 5 to 6 months right now to process an EB-5 application.
现在呢，大约要5到6个月的时间 在移民局等待这个移民局的审批，需大概5到6个月时间。
During this time, the investor's capital will stay in the escrow account.
在这段时间内呢，您的这50万美金的本金呢，将放在一个托管账户里面。
And the escrow account is controlled and managed by an independent party, not connected to the attorney, the investor, or the project.
所谓的托管账户呢，是由一个美国的第三方，独立的第三方来掌管的，和不受投资人本人以及项目方以及律师任何一方人的控制。
After the USCIS approves the 526 application and approves the investment, the escrow agent will release the funds to the business project.
这种第三方通常是指的是银行哈，但是一旦这个 I-526申请被移民局批准以后呢，您的这笔50万的资金就可以由托管账户里面划拨到这个投资人的投资项目方的账户上。
After the government approves the application, the investor who is abroad must also pass a consulate interview to obtain a visa and come to the United States.
一旦移民局批准了 I-526的投资移民的申请，如果投资人是在海外的，那么就将到；如果是在中国，就将到广州的领事馆接受问话，通过签证。
If the investor passes the interview and obtains a visa, they have 6 months to come to the United States.
一旦签证成功，投资人可以在半年内入境美国。
Once they arrive in the United States, they have 2 years from the date of entry to comply with all EB-5 job creation requirements.
那么在入境美国之日起算2年内，必须达到移民局要求的就业的一些条件，以便下一步呢把这个有条件绿卡的有条件去掉。
Those investors who are already in the United States don't need a visa, but they need to file what's called a 485 application to adjust their status.
如果投资人已经在美国境内的，就不需要去签证，直接在美国境内申请 I-485，直接调整身份获得绿卡，或者有条件绿卡。
This chart describes some statistics released by the USCIS about the EB-5 program.
这个是由美国移民局最新公布的一些投资移民方面的数据。
It shows how many 526 applications have been filed, and as you can see, the program has gotten more and more popular over the past 6 years.
您可以看到这个EB-5 投资移民的项目现在是越来越热门了。有多少这个 I-526，也就是有条件绿卡的申请，是现在达到了2000多。
This is also released by the government, and it shows the approval rate of 526 applications by the USCIS.
这也是移民局公布的，就是 I-526有条件绿卡的这种申请的批准率。
As you can see, over the past 6 years, the general approval rate by the government has increased.
大家可以看到，这个批准率是不断的提高的。
This is because the government is very interested in using this program to help the United States expand its economy.
因为现在美国经济不好，美国政府呢对于这种投资移民能够促进美国经济的这种方式呢是非常的支持的。
And this shows the statistics about removal of the conditional green card.
这种呢是所谓的 I-829，就是去掉有条件绿卡，就是有条件绿卡转正式绿卡时候的申请。
And the chart on the next page shows how many visas have been issued in the EB-5 program by the USCIS.
这张图上大家可以看到 EB-5 签证现在的发放人数哈。
As you can see, this year alone, so far there have been almost 3 times as many visas issued by the USCIS compared to the previous years.
大家可以看到，今年还没有结束，它的签证发放量已经是去年的将近3倍。
This describes basically what the function of the attorney is in the process and how the investors can avoid risks.
下面我们重点讲一下投资人如何规避风险以及我们律师的作用。
Our law firm will help you choose the right project. We will find you a great selection of projects to invest in, but ultimately the choice of which project to invest in will be yours.
我们律师楼呢将提供尽量多的信息，帮助投资人选择投资移民的项目，但是最终呢，项目的选择权仍然在于您。
After you retain us to assist you with your EB5 investment, we will provide you legal services until you are granted your green card.
一旦您选择我们作为您的投资移民的律师，我们将自始至终为您提供高效、踏实的移民法律服务，直到您取得绿卡。
We will also represent you independently from any regional centers, from the business projects, or from the escrow managers.
我们呢也将独立的为您服务，相对于区域中心，相对于项目方以及我们是相对独立的，我们是代表投资人的律师。
And of course, we will keep you up to date consistently about your investment and about the EB5 program in general.
我们呢也将提供各种高效准确的信息。
As I mentioned before, the investment funds are kept in an independent escrow account while the application for investment is pending before the government.
刚才我讲到了，就是所有的那个投资资本呢，在I-526获得最终批准之前呢，都是放在一个托管账户里面的。
If the investor's application is not approved for whatever reason by the USCIS, or if the investor fails to obtain a visa to come to the U.S. or to adjust his status, the investment capital and all the attorney fees and regional center fees will be returned.
那么这里退费的问题呢，就是一旦你的I-526临时绿卡申请被拒绝，或者您的签证面试没有通过，或者 I-485的调整身份的申请被拒绝的，所有的律师费、托管金额以及您的资本都将全部还给投资人。
Part of the escrow agreements require that the escrow manager transfer funds back to the investor shortly after any rejection by the government.
这些都是美国移民法规定的，也就是放在托管账户里的账户的钱呢，的本金呢都必须归还给投资人。
However, there are many aspects of the program that require honesty on the part of the investor about his or her background and the source of investment capital.
当然，这种全部退费的方式呢，也要求投资人必须诚实的向律师以及项目方提供所有您的信息。
If the application is denied by the government because of concealment of certain facts by the investor, in that case, and only in that case, will the investor bear the attorney fees and the regional center fees.
如果您的投资移民被移民局拒绝，是由于投资人本人隐瞒了重大的事实，主要是犯罪事实，那么投资人呢将承担一定的律师费用以及区域中心的审查费用等等。
Finally, if the application is rejected by the government, in no event will the investor ever lose his investment funds. They will always be returned to him or her.
但是不管怎么样，您的这个50万美元的本金都将全部的返还。如果您的这个投资申请被拒绝的话。